Welcome to another episode of the Eric Crocker Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back. And on today's show, we are going over all things Kyle Shanahan, the genius that he is, or is he? And just kind of talk about his coaching methods, things that have led to the 49ers being what? Going to 3 NFC championship games in 4 years, having the Super Bowl appearance, turning this team around. But also, are there some things that potentially are holding them back from really getting over that hump? Is the constructive criticism right? Is it wrong? Should we just ease up on Kyle Shanahan? We're going to talk about all that and more. Hello and good morning. Appreciate everybody for tuning in this morning. Make sure you
Like and subscribe this video.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. I'm excited to kind of get into this and have this conversation. I invited my guy Rich Madrid on because I feel like Rich knows Kyle more than anybody, especially from like a philosophical standpoint, right? Just from like the plays, the X's and O's. What is he trying to do? What's he asking from his quarterbacks? And why there might be so many differing opinions on that. All right. But it's really difficult to kind of judge a guy who has had the level of success that Kyle Shanahan has, being a terrific offensive coordinator, really in all his stops, doing a terrific job with the Atlanta Falcons, obviously getting them to the Super Bowl, a few minutes away from really winning that. Contributed to blowing the lead, but I'm not going to put it all on him. But really, everything that he's done with the 49ers. And I feel like we question him along the way. Like any chance we get, we question him. You have people that kind of put him down. And I don't know if it's people holding him to just a higher standard. And that's what we're hearing more about. Or is it people really just feel like, nah, he's not really as great as people say that he is? I think that he's a terrific coach. I think he's a great coach. But I also think that there's certain things that might be different. Now, I played for the San Jose SaberCats and I won an Arena Bowl championship. And the coach that I had there was head coach Darren Arbett. Darren Arbett, I want to say he coached the San Jose SaberCats from the start. I think maybe their first year was like 1995 or so. And in that time, between then and then the last year with the San Jose SaberCats, he actually coached me during that time. He won 4 Arena Bowl championships. All right. That's professional league, won 4 championships. Now, I think last year or this past Arena League season, it's not even the Arena League right now, it's like the IFL. He coached the Bay Area Panthers out in Oakland. I believe that's where they were. And he only coached 2 games. After 2 games, he kind of parted ways because he couldn't coach the way that he wanted to coach. All right. Like he's an interesting coach. So let's talk about kind of the dynamics of the kind of coach that he is, some of the other coaches that I've experienced, which I've coached. I've been under a lot of different coaches, and then kind of tie in Kyle Shanahan to all of this. All right. And if we can try to figure out where he's at. So Coach Darren Arbett, and I was talking to one of the players, and he's like, yeah, man, like he had some issues with some of the players. The players went to the coaches complained to ownership, and basically they got Darren Arbett out of there. Right. And I'm like, dude, one thing about Darren Arbett, you kind of got to let him do his thing. Like, this is a guy that won 4 Arena Bowl championships. The year that I played with the San Jose SaberCats, we lost 1 game all year. We crushed everybody. I mean, most of those games weren't even close. And the team that we lost to was actually the worst team in the Arena League, the LA Kiss, owned by the legendary Kiss band. But we lost to them in overtime. They were like the worst team in the league. That was our one loss all year, where we kind of just like let off the gas a little bit. But we were extremely well coached. We were very disciplined. And I think a lot of it had to do with the methods of Darren Arbett, where he's a guy that I think people maybe don't understand, but whatever he did, the Jedi mind tricks that he did to really get the most out of us, he did that to the highest standard. I mean, we would come into the locker room after games we just won and really feel like we lost, because all we're doing is thinking about areas where it's like, man, I didn't do this right. Man, we went over this and then I didn't execute this right. So we did that, and you see just that you understand maybe why he was the way he was. I thought it was like kind of wild, kind of crazy, right? In the moment, I actually hated it. I think that was like the least amount of fun I ever had playing football. But what we got out of it was a championship and a fat ring. Okay, so I look at what Arbet did and how he was, and maybe how he's misunderstood. And I kind of try to tie that into Kyle Shanahan, right? I'll talk about another coach I've been under. I've been under quite a few, but let's say Rex Ryan and my stint with the New York Jets. Rex was probably like the best coach I've ever been around from the standpoint of understanding X's and O's. he's a master at that, right? I mean, his dad's Buddy Ryan, and we know what his brother is, right? He's a terrific defensive coordinator in the league as well, defensive coach as well. And Rex, although it was like his dad's defense, and obviously like he created kind of this hybrid version of it, he knew it like the back of his hand. Like X's and O's, there was nobody that I would really put up there with D'Amico Ryan, with Rex Ryan, just in an understanding of what it is that he's trying to do defensively. But even then, he'd give his players input. He'd allow them to, hey, coach, what do you think about if I do this? And he'd tell them like, hey man, like, yeah, we can do these things. Now, if it doesn't work, Calvin, and I'm talking about Calvin Pace, because I remember specifically Calvin Pace saying, hey, coach, man, what do you think about, I drop in the coverage, I do this, and, we kind of do this. And he's like, yeah, we could do that. But, if it doesn't work, we won't do it again, but we can do it, right? And it just felt like he had this certain level of, like, empowering with his players, like something that he did to get the most out of them. The year I was there, they ended up, and I got let go, but they ended up going 8-8. And I remember looking at that team and thinking, that is not an 8-8 team. Like, and when I say 8-8, I mean they should be far worse than that. Geno Smith had no idea what he was doing during that year. He was all over the place. The running game was kind of protrude. You did have Chris Ivory, and he was cool. Mike Goodson, he was in and out of kind of trouble, but he ended up playing some games. Didn't really have a great receiving core. Jeremy Curley was their leading receiver. Defensively, you had some guys, and they had to kind of lean on that. But it wasn't a team that you would have thought in a million years would win 8 games with that style. But they were able to win 8 games because of how great of a coach I felt like Rex Ryan was, and his ability to get the most out of guys. So you kind of look at Rex Ryan, and you look at that situation, and you look at Kyle Shanahan in this situation. And I do think that Kyle does a great job of getting the most out of players. But and this is just me, maybe not truly understanding because I haven't been coached by him, but I feel like there's areas where I would do things just a little different. And who am I? I have coached these younger kids. I do have my philosophies on coaching. All right. I understand, coaching hard. I understand trying to get the most out of guys, but I sometimes don't understand like this doghouse by Kyle Shanahan, and if it's truly warranted, and maybe it is. So where did all this come from? Here we go. I'm gonna actually share this tweet here, and hopefully y'all can see it. I might have to zoom in a little bit. Let's see if I can zoom in. All right. I can't zoom in. Okay, so essentially what it is, you got Kyle Shanahan, and they're talking about Ronnie Bell. So here we go. She said, according to Next Gen Stats, Ronnie Bell leads all NFL receivers in the preseason with 87 yards after catch. Kyle Shanahan says Bell still has a long way to go. He has 2 drops that have turned into interceptions in the preseason, but he's hopeful he can clean things up. And my response was, because I feel like Kyle kind of really focuses on this. All right. Kyle Shanahan says Bell still has a long way to go, and he has 2 drops that have turned into interceptions, but he's hopeful he can clean things up. I feel like there's been several opportunities for Kyle Shanahan not to kiss somebody's ass. All right, like you as a coach, your job is not to kiss somebody's ass. Your job is to get the most out of players. And again, some coaches go about it different ways to get the most out of players. But I feel like the way he does it, he throws guys into this doghouse, right? And he'll see if they end up getting out of the doghouse and then work his way out. And if it did, it worked, right? Because that's a lot of the responses that I was getting. So let's look at some of these responses real quick. And also, Kyle had more positive things to say about him. And but this was like the first thing I said. And within saying positive things, he still kind of said this. But anyways, here's Logan here. Logan says, and yet we were all complaining about Kyle doing this with Aiyuk, and now look at him. So I look at the Aiyuk situation. And if y'all remember, Brandon Aiyuk was in the doghouse. Kyle Shanahan actually came out on the radio. And listen, I talk about Darren Arbett. Darren Arbett was a really tough coach on all of us players, but it wasn't out in the media. It was just kind of like one-on-one. He didn't say things to us. When I heard Kyle Shanahan on the radio talk about Brandon Aiyuk, and this was when Aiyuk was in the doghouse, and say, if we would have had healthier players, Brandon Aiyuk wouldn't have played as much as a rookie. And I'm just like, Brandon Aiyuk had a solid rookie year. And it feels like Kyle's method. I'm not saying Kyle is wrong. Maybe he's right. But his method is to, anytime he can, point out more so the things he doesn't like about somebody, as opposed to build up the things that he does like, build off of that while still focusing on the things that he wants them to improve on. All right. So it's kind of a way of words and kind of manipulating them to get across what it is they're trying to do while still kind of building that kid's momentum. Okay. So, the thing that they noted there was Kyle says he still has a long way. He thinks Ronnie Bell still has a long way to go. Well, we know Ronnie Bell still has a long way to go. But why can't in the process, again, I'm not saying kiss his ass. All right, these are professionals. And Kyle, you're gonna coach guys the way you want. But in the process of trying to get the most out of Ronnie Bell, why can't we say, you know what, man, Ronnie Bell has done some really good things. Love what he's doing. We got some areas we need to clean up, a couple drops that resulted in interceptions. But man, he coming in and he's doing this and he's doing that. And it really just the way you word things can instill just a level of confidence in his players. And Kyle just typically does the opposite. Go back to Trey Lance's rookie year. And I always feel like this is where things kind of took a turn for, I don't want to say the worst, but kind of where they are right now. Everything coming out of camp was how Trey Lance was lighting it up. I saw guys like Mayoko and Barrows, and I'm listening to these different podcasts, and they're like, man, this kid is way ahead of where anybody thought he would be. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's looking good. Matter of fact, I think that's the best I've ever heard anyone speak about Trey Lance. It was the first couple weeks of training camp. And when they had the opportunity to ask Kyle about it, Kyle came out and was just like, he's far away from where he needs to be. Nope, he won't be our starter. Jimmy Garoppolo is our starter. He won't have a chance. Nope, he won't get first team reps. We'll see if he continues to get better, but blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that was your opportunity. That was your opportunity right there to, while Trey might be confident, riding high, he's doing different things, he's stretching the field, he's throwing these different levels. Like, this is like, oh man, I'm coming into the league. Okay, we know there's going to be ups and downs, but that was your chance. That was your chance to build on something, to build that confidence, to build that momentum. And from that moment, he kind of broke him down. Now I do see Lee Ving in the chat, and he says broken finger was a bigger setback than ever reported Trey rookie. And again, I don't know. Now these conversations I'm talking about, this is prior to the broken finger. All right. So the finger didn't happen just yet. But it was just interesting where you have this kid that is potentially kind of riding high, and he's heading in the right direction. He's doing these things. And instead of, okay, I'm going to insert him this way, I'm going to get him reps this way, I'm going to actually put him with the first team, it's like, nope, not ready. And it's like, dang. And the way he does it, again, I'm not saying the doghouse is bad, because somebody, again, I'll put it back up, this message here. What did the guy say? I know that might be hard to read. It's a little small. Pause. All right. But he says, and yet we are all complaining about Kyle doing with Aiyuk, and now look at him, right? And we talked about what Aiyuk being in the doghouse, etc. It took Aiyuk 3 years to get to this point. Aiyuk has always had the talent, always had the ability. Aiyuk had a solid rookie year. Not anything amazing, but it was like solid, like close to 800 yards, about 6 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns. Like, he had a solid year. And instead of building off of that, it was like, no, he shouldn't have played as a rookie. Like, you come out and say this, shouldn't have played as a rookie. And then he's starting this year in the doghouse because he's not doing the things I want him to do. And it's like, I get it. But along the way, there was no way to kind of build up his confidence and help him along, because it is tough. It is tough to be a pro. It is tough to play receiver in the NFL. There's a lot that goes into it. I look at the other guys and I feel like, I think he's just as talented as all the other guys that took off. Why is it that CeeDee Lamb gets hyped up the way he does and he's considered a top 10 receiver? Why Justin Jefferson? I mean, and he's been amazing, but all those guys from his class, even Michael Pittman, we look at what those guys did, and it was like, this kid is just as talented and he's able to be just as productive if Kyle isn't throwing them in the doghouse. Now, again, I understand Kyle needs his things done a very specific way. And if you're not doing it that way, then you end up in this doghouse. And I just feel like for young guys that are trying to grow into their own, that's kind of tough. And I think that's the reason why a lot of these younger guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball, we don't see them really grow into what their potential is going to be until 2-3 years down the line. All right. I think that's the reason why certain guys just never quite work out under him, because Dante Pettis, you can look at Dante Pettis and you can look at how this situation turned out. And you could say, he's just a cat guy. He's not a dog, right? Like we could say that. But I'll tell you what, he got hurt his rookie year. When he wasn't hurt, Dante Pettis did some really good stuff. High levels. I mean, just the way he was able to, move his body, his routes, his releases. He was cooking guys his rookie year. Like when he was on the field, you saw him be able to stretch the field. He can work underneath. You put him in the slot. He's turning around Davis in the slot against Tampa Bay, scoring a touchdown. Like there were a lot of things that he did well, but he got in Kyle's doghouse. And he was never able to get out of Kyle's doghouse. All right. So I was hoping that my guy Rich Madrid could come on here so he can kind of dive into more as to why Kyle is the way he is, because I know there's a reason. And I know there's a reason he's like that has helped the 49ers win as much as they have. My question is, do we have the right to question somebody who has went to 3 NFC championships and a Super Bowl in the last 4 years? Should we be questioning him? Should we be questioning his methods? Should we be questioning really kind of a level of greatness, especially when you look at the coaches that have been underneath him and some of the success that they're having, right? Like playing off of the way that he does things. As far as calling plays, the mindset, the understanding, they all say like he's the guy. He's the big dog. All right. He's the big dog. But is there a chance that Kyle is holding himself back from potentially winning a Super Bowl? The title of this is 49ers Kyle Shanahan's coaching methods leads to success. Will it lead to a Super Bowl victory? That's what everybody wants. So I think he's not in, with the success that he has had. We're not talking about, goddamn, I don't know, any of these coaches that ain't winning. Like I don't have him in the same category or tier of coaching as like Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh might end up being great, whatever. I don't have him in that tier. I don't have him in the same tier as the coach from the Chargers or, whoever's Mike McDaniel's coaching the Raiders. Like, he's not in those tiers. We're having him in the tier of the greats, right? The Andy Reids, the Sean Paytons, you're up there in that tier of coaching. Mike Tomlin, even though he hasn't won a playoff game in a while, but Mike Tomlin, who always has a certain level of success, right? Like Mike Tomlin went to the playoffs, or not went to the playoffs. He had an 8-8 season with Duck Hodges at quarterback. with Duck Hodges. Okay, so I'm gonna open the floor to y'all because I asked my questions, and my biggest question is, I understand how good of a coach he is. Is his stubbornness with his players the one thing that's potentially stopping him from really getting over the top? Now, this might all be a moot point if Jimmy Garoppolo just hits deep ball to Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl. We might not be having this conversation. But it didn't happen. So now we're having these conversations about potentially why it has played out the way it has. And does his stubbornness potentially get in the way? I think we do know one thing. If you are able to do it Kyle Shanahan's way, you will be successful. Getting guys to be able to do it that way, the process that goes into that is probably the more difficult part about it. All right. So here we go. Everybody's about to, they're clicking in. We're going to talk about it. Before I start to click in the first caller, again, this show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Download the app or go to underdogfantasy.com. And when you sign up with your initial deposit of up to $100, Underdog Fantasy will double that. But they're not just doubling your initial deposit. You got to make sure that you put promo code Crocky. All right. So they're going to ask you, like, how'd you hear about us? You put in Crocky. All right. They'll double your deposit and we all get paid. We all get paid. All right. We're going to have some underdog fantasy stuff. I might do some stuff on Friday leading up to the game. Friday morning, we'll get on the underdog fantasy and we'll talk about the 49ers player props that they have going on there. All right. So again, Underdog Fantasy, download the app or go to underdogfantasy.com. It's actually in the description too. The link is in the description. Click that and use promo code Crocky when you sign up. They'll double your initial deposit up to $100. All right. Up to $100. So make sure y'all do that. Also, this episode and every episode is up on Spotify, Apple. Somebody asked me, like, Croc, is this on Spotify? Yes, it's on Spotify. Croc, is it on Apple? Yes, it's on Apple as well. All right. So you guys can, it's in the description below. If you want to listen to the audio version, because maybe you want to speed up. I feel like I talk fast anyways, but maybe you want to speed me up so we can kind of get through this or whatever. Make sure you guys click those links. All right. Appreciate everybody in here. Hit that like and subscribe buttons. But let's get to the callers now. Put my headphones on. All right. Okay. Here we go. First caller, San Francisco. Bay, drummer, you are in. Good morning. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, Crack? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm asking, questions this morning, and I understand the greatness of Kyle Shanahan. He has some different methods than maybe I would go about it, but who the hell am I? I'm just a guy in his kitchen talking about the 49ers. What are some of your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan, where he's at? Is he as great as everybody says? Is there one thing potentially holding him back? Or, you know what? His methods have worked 3 NFC championships over the last 4 years. We should not be questioning anything about Kyle. Your thoughts?
It's an excellent question. Um, I say that his method is working for now. We've seen a lot of success with going to NFC championship games and winning a lot of games and being competitive. But when that starts to falter, I feel that even though he has the respect of the locker room, it will start to get tuned out and it will fall on deaf ears. Just as in comparison to Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh, what I would say the difference between him and Kyle is that Jim Harbaugh, to me, was more emotionally intelligent towards his players. He built up his players and not really had a public doghouse where everybody knew about it, even if somebody was uh, not in the or not doing, the 49er way. Um, and I will the key word for what I would like to see Kyle is balance. If he learns a good balance between not necessarily praising but lifting up and propping up his players, or not even that, but just giving encouragement to his players, and then also being harsh at the same way, I feel that he would get the most out of the team. Because yes, you want to win, you have to have some kind of stick to like get them to, do what you need to do, like because we want to uphold a certain standard, which I understand. Because I mean, I myself, I'm a drummer. I play in different bands, so there's things that I critique myself on because I want different opportunities. So you have to find balance. Like, yeah, you need to keep yourself up, but you also do need something to hold yourself accountable to, reach a new level. And even if you feel that you've reached a plateau, change some stuff up where you can excel. Because, I mean, to the day you die, you always want to try to go higher and seek higher and see how high you can go. Shoot for the stars or shoot like past space. It can be done, but you just got to, find balance, and that's my main thing with Kyle.
So do you think that he is kind of working towards finding that balance? Do you think that's something that he'll learn down the line? I did see somebody in the chat and they said, gosh, hopefully I still see, I should have started. All right, but they talked about Andy Reid. Here we go. Took Andy Reid 20 years to get his QB. It's a QB driven league. And I have said, and again, I don't want to act like Kyle's just like this idiot, but I have said that I don't know if Kyle would know what to do with Andy Reid. And I think that's part of Kyle's stubbornness. I think Kyle more so, and again, we've seen this work and be successful. All right. But I do think it's a very specific quarterback that he'll be successful with. But it's you do this my way. All right. And if you do it my way, we will be successful. How do I know that's his thoughts? Because on the Play Callers podcast, Kyle Shanahan, there's a story that they talk about with RG3 where he let RG3 run his own play. All right. So he told him, all right, RG3, go ahead. You get to run your own play, call your play. We'll go over it in the meetings, and then you go out there on the practice field and you execute it. All right. So he does it. RG3, he's excited. He's telling the guys, this is the play, this is how we do it. He first went out there, it was a disaster. All right. It was a disaster. Not great. Then the next day, he made it work. Right. And Kyle said, man, how did it feel when you ran the play and it worked? He was like, man, it felt good. It felt great, And Kyle said, that's how I feel about all of my plays. So
Yeah.
Kyle's not looking for that guy that is going to, hey, I want to truly, truly in my heart of hearts, in my mind, work my system around the player. I want to work the player into my system. And if you can do that and see the field the way I do, you could be successful. Like we saw with Brock Purdy. Like we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo was able to execute at a decently good level with Kyle. But like that's what we've seen him really kind of go towards. So when you look at Patrick Mahomes, I don't know if his style would mesh with Kyle. And I don't know if you would ever seen the best version of him because he does so much off script type stuff. All right. And that's not to say he can't do the high level, just in rhythm and play stuff. But we've seen, he talked about, man, for 2 years, he couldn't even read a defense. Like it's just, hey, I'm just out here making plays and throwing the ball around. I think that would have drove Kyle crazy. All right. So I know that it took Andy Reid 20 years. Did it take Andy Reid 20 years to say, you know what? I'm going to pull back. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to, I got this guy. He possesses a certain level of talent. I'm just going to let him do him. Would Andy Reid have did that 10 years earlier? Or did it take Andy Reid going through some of those things to have the mindset of letting his quarterback do that thing? So as it pertains to Kyle and it taking, a long time for Andy Reid, do you think that's the issue with Kyle Shanahan?
I think it's somewhat of an issue, but to me, Andy, from what I looked at, like each quarterback he had, he sort of adapted to what their strengths are, and I don't feel that Kyle knows how to do that yet, because like he knows how to do that in terms with Jimmy and Brock, but I don't feel that he utilized Trey Lance's strengths, because we still see it now in preseason. But even when Trey had the keys last year, I don't think he adapted to his strengths. Like, I don't know. He had a lot of time to try to get comfort with Trey and just didn't do it. So I think that's malpractice on him. So
All right.
it may take Kyle to get fired for him to like get a slice of humble pie and then say, okay, maybe I need to rearrange on what I'm doing.
All right. Good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, all right. I got some super chats I want to read real quick. And then I have a special guest I want to bring on before I get to the other callers because I think it's somebody that truly understands and he's watched so much film that he knows what Kyle thinks. And that's what we're trying to dive into, like the methods that lead to his success and maybe is there anything that might lead to why he might not get over that hump. All right. Real quick, we got Gammon in the chat. He says Will Levis got a lifetime deal with Hellman's mayo. First of all, I do not eat mayo at all. So seeing him, put that mayo in that coffee, that's gross. But he puts mayo in his coffee and eats banana peel. What is the weirdest thing you eat in your kitchen behind you? Don't be raunchy. Won't be raunchy. You know what, man? I don't eat anything that I think is too weird. I would say, I don't know. I put banana in my oatmeal. But I think a lot of people probably do that. Let me think about that. I don't think I have anything that's like too crazy that I eat where people would be like, what the hell? Like, how do you eat that? I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm pretty kind of straightforward. All right, we got another one here. It says, who would be Kyle's ideal QB? All right, you know what? I'm gonna save this question for my guest that I have coming on. All right, I think Kyle delays letting talented rookies pop, suppresses stats, and makes them a late bloomer equals cheap extensions, prove it deal below market. My tenfold theory. You know what, Sean? That's a great theory, but I would say you're wrong because of this. When you do that, you put yourself in a predicament with like Debo Samuel. Well, I think they definitely planned on utilizing him early on, but he got hurt year 2. Okay. And then he pops year 3. And then now all of a sudden, heading into year 4, we have to give him this extension. But now you have like limited production and have to pay a guy based on this great 1 year, top of the market type money. So I don't know if that's the way that they're truly trying to go with that. All right. Coming on now, man, and I said at the start of the show I wanted to get this guy on because he truly understands Kyle Shanahan. So I'm not going to use up too much of his time. But Rich Madrid, welcome to the show. Rich, how you doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I have some questions to ask you, but first I want you to answer this question. Who would Kyle's ideal QB be outside of the 49ers?
I think it would be any of the top guys, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, anybody that we all wish we had. I don't think he has like a specific type just because he has success with a certain type of quarterback and not others. I think anytime you have one of those truly special elite talents, I think you would absolutely want that guy. And I think I think he would want any of those guys.
Do you think that, because I watched Josh Allen, right? And we all saw kind of what went into Josh Allen becoming the quarterback that he is today, but he's still not without fault. He has the wildest turnovers, I think, where they're really kind of like head scratchers. Do you think there's certain things that, and we know how talented Josh Allen is, but do you think there's certain things that he does that would like maybe drive Kyle Shanahan crazy?
Yeah, I think out of the bunch, he's probably the one that's the most erratic, but again, like that's probably better. That would be absolutely better than anything we've had. So I do think he values a little bit more of the quarterbacks that will sit there and play in structure. But again, he watched Josh Allen completely dismantle his top five defense in 2020. Yeah. Granted, that was without Nick Bosa, but I mean, at some point you gotta kind of compromise on kind of what you want versus what's available to you. And even though Allen can be kind of a bit of like he is like the gunslinger in the NFL now, I think he would still absolutely take that. I think you try to work around that. And I think the misnomer about Allen is that he won't sit there and go through his reads, but he does. He's a bit of a wild card sometimes. And I think that would frustrate Kyle a little bit, but again, he's one of those just top talents that you would want.
So, Rich, you watch a ton of film, and not just on 49ers. You do a lot of great stuff with the Packers as well. But when it comes to Kyle Shanahan and maybe some of his like philosophies as a coordinator, who is Kyle Shanahan? Like, what are his strengths, and maybe what weaknesses do you think he has?
Well, obviously, everybody knows his strengths, right? It's the scheme, it's the play design, it's play calling, it's the way that his offense creates space for its best players. I don't think anybody can deny that. Where I think his weaknesses lie are like just more the in-game stuff. And I'm sorry if you can hear me doing stuff. I'm trying to get my kids breakfast. That's why you can't see me.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
They're still out of school for another couple of weeks, so it's the in-game management. You know, the fourth down decision making at midfield. Getting conservative before halftime when he probably should be trying to drive downfield and at least get a field goal or something. Like it's all like the spur of the moment type stuff that happens where you need a quick decision and he decides to sit on it or not take a chance. I think that's what frustrates a lot of fans in games. Outside of that, like everything being talked about with the quarterbacks and not evaluating them. I don't really know that like that's really a weakness because a lot of teams don't hit that. A lot of these teams that have good quarterbacks, they kind of fell into them, you know, in the draft, had that draft position where they could take someone outside of the Chiefs who traded up. But, you know, there's not that many quarterbacks you can evaluate and go, yeah, these guys are going to be good in 10 years. I think that's more of a crapshoot than anyone wants to believe. But they did, I think, you know, there is probably some truth to the idea that they did misevaluate both quarterbacks they have. But again, like a dozen teams every year are going to do that. So I don't really think that that's something that's easily overcome, although it could be a weakness if you want to call it that.
When you look at his handling of the players, right, and we've talked about Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, you know, I came on here and I talked about just kind of the coaches that I played for in different ways that they've done things to get the most out of players. Do you think that this doghouse is like a real thing and it's like super warranted? Or do you think Kyle is just kind of a nonsense guy and it's just like, you know what, you're going to do it my way or you're going to end up in this doghouse until you do it my way? Do you think that kind of hinders his ability to maybe get the most out of certain guys like earlier as opposed to kind of bringing them along and, you know, not kissing their ass, but giving them more confidence early on? Like, because this started because I talked about like Ronnie Bell, and part of his quote was that, oh man, Ronnie Bell, he still has a long way to go. You know, there were a couple of drops that resulted in interceptions. It's like, we know that, and Ronnie knows that. But there's also things that he has done well. So is there a balance of building on the things that a guy is doing well while also obviously like acknowledging to the players that there's certain things that you have to clean up without putting him in the doghouse? Or do you think like, nope, straight to the doghouse, and that's kind of warranted when he does that?
You know, I don't really think that we know what being in his doghouse means. I mean, we've heard like maybe stories here and there, but I don't really know what leads to it or why it really gets talked about that often. It's just kind of a joke now. I mean, with Dante Pettis, you could see like someone who just had tremendous talent. Like I really thought he was going to be like one of their next best receivers, but it just didn't quite click for him at the NFL level, you know, and then he bounced around to the Giants and he still looked like he was doing the same things that would frustrate a head coach. Like just didn't look like he could get off the ball that well and things like that. And so there's probably a little bit more there than we think. Aiyuk, again, he was another one who kind of took it easy on his routes as a rookie and as a second-year player. And that's what I think led to the perception that he was in the doghouse. Like, I mean, he was pretty much just the guy running the clear-out routes on all the pass plays at the beginning of the 2021 season until he like showed that he could, you know, run other routes in the offense. I thought we have heard somewhere that Kyle is ridiculously harder on receivers than anyone else, and which would make sense because a lot of the stuff they do requires the receivers to run the right amount of steps on their routes, requires them to be on time just as much as the quarterback. So there probably is, again, some truth there, but how much, I don't really know. I don't know if that Ronnie Bell frustrates him that much. I mean, that kid just looks amazing right now. And yeah, he's got a couple of bad drops, but I don't really think it's that big of a deal. And I don't know if Kyle thinks it's that big of a deal. I mean, obviously you don't want him dropping passes, but you know, when Debo was a rookie, Debo dropped a ton of passes. When Kittle, I mean, he still drops passes. When Kittle drops a ton of passes every now and then. I don't think it's that much of a hindrance. I just think there's other things that Kyle wants them to be able to do, like run 7 steps if it's a drift route or run 1 step if it's a quick slant. Like they have to be on time with so many other things and be able to do so many other things and just catch the ball that I only think that's a small part of being in the doghouse. So if Ronnie Bell's just not grasping the playbook, not able to run the right routes, or get the right footwork down. I mean, they're so detailed that they tell you in the route tree like what foot should be forward when you're at the line of scrimmage, like your left foot forward or right foot forward, depending on the route and depending on the steps and where you need to break for the pass. So if he's not doing any of that, then he could be in the doghouse. If he is and he's just dropping a pass here and there, then I don't think they really care that much.
All right. Well, Rich, man, I appreciate you coming on. I know you are at the house working with the kids right now, you know, making them breakfast and everything. Thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Croc.
All right. And we're going to have you on during the year, too, to kind of break down some of the things that 49ers are doing offensively. Maybe hopefully I can kind of have a segment where I get you on every week and you just kind of talk about some of the things that worked offensively from a schematic standpoint. If you're watching the Niners, I know you watch a lot of Packers, but
yeah, I'll be watching both. So yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come on.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks.
All right. Shout out to my guy, Rich J. Madrid. You guys can follow him on Twitter as well at Rich J. Madrid, and puts out terrific content for the Green Bay Packers, for the 49ers. He's watching film. He's breaking it down. And I don't think anybody I have my guy, Greg Pinelli, come on. And even Greg, I was with Greg a few weeks ago out in Modesto, and Greg was like, dude, I don't know how Rich knows this shit, but he's fucking good, man. Like, he knows this offense. Like he's like, that's the only guy. Because Greg thinks a lot of people are kind of, I don't want to say idiots, but like they just don't know what they're talking about. And he praises Rich for his knowledge of the offense. So Rich knows his stuff. I'm going to have to definitely get Rich on during the year. All right, here we go. We got Sean. He says, most teams aren't successful franchises with top 5 coaches. Kyle can't be measured against most coaches as an excuse for misevaluating QBs while at the same time saying he's a better coach. I get what you're saying. It might just be down to just you got the quarterback, you got the great offensive mind, and you're going to be consistently good, right? Like if Kyle would have had another 5 years or 4 years with Matt Ryan, you know, what would that have looked like? Would they have finally got like that one victory instead of just he had the 1 year, they had the growing pains, he had the next year, Matt Ryan was MVP, and then boop, I'm going to the 49ers and coaching Brian Hoyer. All right. You know, if he had another couple years with Matt Ryan, you know, what would that have looked like? And will we be talking about him in a different way or maybe potentially kind of getting over that hump? All right. I thought this was a good one here. He says, I've never heard the word genius and Mike Tomlin in the same sentence. The man has never had a losing season ever. He's won with good and bad teams, but he always gets overlooked. You know why I think he gets overlooked? I think Mike Tomlin gets overlooked because he doesn't call plays. And look at Bieniemy, right? Who, man, I watched Bieniemy with Washington, watch him call plays for what's that quarterback they got right now from North Carolina? Sam Howell. I watch Bieniemy with Sam Howell right now, and I'm like, damn, we got Sam Howell looking good right now. It's just preseason, but like Sam Howell looked good in the preseason. Like he was decisive. He's making throws. He's making throws at all levels of the field, making plays with his legs. I'm like, you know, but Bieniemy had to leave Kansas City. He had to leave Kansas City to actually get taken serious as a play caller. So I think for Mike Tomlin, the biggest thing is he doesn't call plays on offense or defense. He's just the CEO. So I think that's why people don't consider him a genius. But I think there is genius in being able to year in and year out get the most out of your guys. That's why week 1, people are looking at week 1 and it's just like, oh, 49ers are going to win. And when I say people, I think 49er fans. I'm looking at week 1. Remember, I was on Bleacher Report when the schedule dropped. And week 1, I had the 49ers losing. Like, I don't care who they have. And Kenny Pickett's actually like looking good this year. All right, year 2, he's looking good. But their biggest downfall last year, they had no offensive line. If they have fixed that, like they're going to be a very well-coached team. They got good players on both sides of the ball. Like they're going to be tough. And they have a ton of good weapons offensively. So that's going to be another team where we're talking about Mike Tomlin and him not being considered a genius. They are going to be tough week 1 in Pittsburgh with those terrible towels going and all that. Like that's going to be a tough team. Wouldn't overlook them. Definitely wouldn't overlook Mike Tomlin. All right, here we go. We got the callers coming in. First caller coming in, we got Tia Ingram. Tia, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good. What are your thoughts? You know, we've talked a lot about Kyle Shanahan this morning, and the genius that he is, and the method to his madness. But are there areas where you're like, you know what, he's actually underrated here, and I think he does a terrific job of coaching and getting the most out of his players? Or are you like, you know what, I think he can kind of do a little bit better in these areas?
I do think he can be a little bit better. I think the point about Andy Reid is that, like you said, I think he was more like Kyle in the beginning, where he was hard, he was tough on the guys, and tough on Terrell Owens and stuff, and he wanted them to do what he said, what he wanted, when he wanted them to do it, and that was it. He got fired. Mentality changed. I need to come in here and I need to. And you hear, even though I can't stand Shady McCoy, but he talks about how Andy Reid is very much a player coach, where he understands how to go to each player with different backgrounds and understanding how to talk to them and treat them with the level of respect. And I think that goes a long way, because if you think about it, Harbaugh was the same way. You remember during that time, those players took up for him when it was going on with Balky. They told them, if you let him go, there will be players that will retire. There will be players that will leave. And what happened? Some retired and some left. So
Yeah.
that lets you know that he was the type of coach that I'm going to go to bat for you, and I love every last one of y'all. And they are all cool to this day with Harbaugh. And you can tell and you can see it, the way that he treated his players. Even with Cap. Cap rides for Harbaugh.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of seems sometimes how it comes off. It may not be true, but it comes off that Kyle has his certain players that he really talk about, that he really likes. Like everybody say, the Cabo clique. He got his Cabo clique that does whatever he says. Hey, this is what we're gonna do. Y'all need to get everybody else in line. But then there's then the rest of the team, he kind of like shits on them. Like if they make one mistake, oh, he needs to play better. He can't do this. But then those Cabo clique, they make a bad play because Debo has fumbled the ball multiple times. And it's kind of like, well, Debo, he just got to make sure he take care of the ball. It won't happen again. His tone and attitude is different. So I think what fans are looking at is, hey, I understand these are your guys and these are your superstars. But if you don't hold them accountable the way that you holding these other players who are not considered superstars at the same level, then it would never be. We won't get to the mountaintop, which is what we are trying to strive for. Bill Belichick used to cuss Tom Brady out. You are just like everybody else. I know you great, but I'm going to make sure that everybody know the way I cuss you out, I'm going to cuss him out. It doesn't matter. And what happened? Like, oh, okay, well, dang, if Tom Brady getting yelled at, okay, I know I'm not any different, because everybody's going to move and do everything that he says. So if you don't treat everybody the same way, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be treated special, but if you want the best out of your team, you have to do everything you can to make sure that, hey, these players are not put on a pedestal, to me. So I think he can be better far as coaching wise. His play calling, of course he's a great play caller, but I think far as how he handles certain players on the team, it does messes with their confidence and how they are prepared for the game, to me. That's how it seems. But I don't know.
Nah, that was good stuff, man. All good stuff, Tia. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right, good stuff, Tia. Let's go. And I think, not this one. Here we go. I think that kind of goes to this right here. Kyle equals great strategist, not a leader of men. I'd actually say I think that's always thrown out there when it comes to head coaches. It's like you got to be a leader of men, right? And I know we hear that thrown, and it's true. You do have to lead men. Guys lead men in different ways, and maybe Kyle's way of leading men is him leading his Cabo crew, and then the Cabo crew kind of letting everybody else know how to get in line, and this is what we want to do. So if he does a great job leading them, maybe that has helped to the kind of the level of success that we've had. Sorry if y'all hear my wife's dog in the background. Oh no, he's tripping. Hey, quiet down, dude. You good? I know you need to go on a walk. All right. Yeah, we won't be too much longer. Okay, just hang tight. All right. That's Romeo. My daughter named him. All right, here we go. Coming up next, we got Blue Magic, Mr. Blue Magic 23. Good morning. How you doing?
What's poppin', Croc? You already know Brooklyn in the building.
Yeah,
So,
BK,
so
Boogie Down Bronx. Sorry.
you already we here. Tia, Tia is highly intelligent. Every time Tia calls, she has one of. If I don't get in front of Tia, one of my points is gone.
Yeah.
Tia is absolutely on point.
Yeah.
And for real, Croc is dead serious. Go watch Rich. Rich Madrid Rich Madrid is low key a monster. His takes are on point. So I'm not going to stay too long because Rich and Tia, pretty much summed up where I was going. So Kyle's strength is like that super chat. He's a strategist. Kyle's game strip is definitely elite. His game strip is elite. But like I said yesterday, it's those in-game adjustments after his script is ran. That if Kyle learns to adjust his game script in play, because teams also adjust. That's what make great coaches geniuses. I'm not discrediting Kyle, but I don't like the genius persona that's put on it. Another thing, we always talk about Matt Ryan when it comes to Kyle. If you go and look back, Matt Ryan was a beast before Kyle. And we also have to understand that it wasn't Kyle that was doing something with Matt Ryan. It was his strategy. It was his scheme. Scheme does play a lot when it comes to a coach or coordinator. That's their foundation. That's what makes these coaches. So with Kyle can scheme players open. And here's another thing. So we always talk about the CJ Beathards and so forth and so on. We go through this whole Jimmy wins. So Kyle's system is extremely quarterback friendly. Extremely. The problem was where most national media analysts took Jimmy and said, "Oh well, what is the team without Jimmy?" When you look at the other quarterbacks, no other quarterbacks had a legit roster. Kittle was out multiple games. Debo was out multiple games. Jimmy was the only quarterback that we had that had majority of a full roster to his advantage. Now, Rich is absolutely right. Kyle's system is predicated on timing and precision. That's what makes his scheme so deadly. If you can run his system with the exact precision and the exact timing, it is very deadly. Kyle's problem is he does not adjust to his players' strengths. So his mentality is, if you do everything the way I say it, we will succeed. You go back to the story with Donovan McNabb. Donovan McNabb, when Kyle had him, yes, Kyle had Donovan McNabb, everybody. We forget this. And Donovan McNabb was an amazing quarterback in his own right. Donovan McNabb ran a play off script away from Kyle's read. What did Kyle say to him? He said, "You will never take another snap from me."
Yeah.
The play worked to perfection. Kyle is his worst enemy.
So the
Kyle
reason why
will,
he did that too was a lot of people they'll look at that year with Donovan McNabb and look at his numbers and say, "Oh, he was washed at this time," and he did retire shortly after that. But just a year prior, he went 10-4 with Philadelphia and went to a Pro Bowl. They just moved on from him and went with Mike Vick, who was still hot at that time. So you were a 10-4 quarterback. Went to a Pro Bowl, moved on to Washington to play under Shanahan, and all of a sudden you're just trash. Like all of a sudden you can't play. All of a sudden you're washed up. And I think when we talk about Kyle again, and there's good and bad that comes with it, I do think that he's looking at for something very, very, very specific. And if you could do that, whatever he's trying to do to the way that he wants you to do it, and through the eyes of that, it works extremely well. And I think we've seen that with several quarterbacks that maybe even can't, we saw Matt Ryan executed it to the highest level. Like that was the highest level. And then you have Jimmy Garoppolo, he executed well. And then you have Brock Purdy, who maybe even takes it a step above Jimmy Garoppolo.
Because Brock has a very underrated level of escapability and improv.
Right.
Now, and even with that, if you listen to Brock even said, oh, well, this year I have to learn on staying within the system. So that's something else that we have to be careful about with Brock this year as well. Because what made Brock so prolific last year was the fact that he went off script. The fact that, if things got too choppy, he was like, all right, I'm going to go and do something, which was the allure of Brock, those scrambles, those rolling out to the left with the pressure, which is where he's comfortable at. Now, as far as being a leader of men, it's okay to be tough. Like, my favorite coach was, I played 3 sports through school. I played football, I played basketball, and I played soccer. But my favorite, my greatest coach was my high school basketball coach, Coach Cook. Loved him to death. Hard as he was tough. He was tough. He did not let you slack. But he also knew when to push you extra hard with extreme tough love and when to allow you to not get down on yourself through your mistakes. That's the difference with Kyle and being a leader of men. There's one, and Rich was absolutely right. If you really go back and look at Aiyuk's rookie year, Aiyuk was dogging it because he was running, he was pushing, and he wasn't getting the ball. And that is something that can mess with a player's psyche. If I'm let's go to basketball real quick. If I'm constantly getting open on my drive into the lane and my point guard is not keeping his head up and I'm hustling on defense, at some point in time, I'm going to be like, yo, what am I doing all of this for if I'm not getting rewarded? Just like when I coach basketball as well. A player miss an open jump shot. All right. Get another look, miss another open jump shot. They get down on themselves. I'll pull them to the side. Listen, that's a good shot. I'd rather you miss that than miss a jump shot where you're trying to shoot over 2 defenders.
Right.
So it's one thing to be tough, and it's one thing to let the players know, listen, and Kyle is, and we all have narcissistic tendencies. So if you want to improv on my system that I believe is great, and I allow you, like he did with RG3, okay, yeah, all right, go run your own joint. Oh, it worked, huh? Yeah, good. So now run mines the way it's supposed to, and it will work every time. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like Andy Reid, what he does, he lets the players draw up their own plays. All right, yeah, this is what you bring a play this week, or you bring a play this back, whatever the case may be, and we'll run through it and we'll see. What do you see? Your quarterback is your general. He's your point guard. He's the head of your operation. So you take in account what did you see in this look? What did you see in this defense? What did you see in X, Y, and Z? Just like with Jimmy. Jimmy played loose when he first came. He didn't know the full playbook, so forth and so on. He was on the move. Jimmy looked good. And Jimmy said it as well. He got to play free. It felt okay. He was able to. We haven't audibled in what? In about 5 years? Like, we audible the least of every team in the league. And I'm talking about the trash teams that don't go nowhere and have nothing. So Kyle doesn't allow you the input that you should have as a quarterback. As a quarterback, I'm out here, Kyle. I'm going through it. I understand where my line strengths are. I understand what my receivers. Certain receivers prefers the ball in certain spots. So if you got me running a slant and you want me to to take my last step before I turn on this leg. It might be awkward for me, but
Right.
in mind, no, you do it this way because it will work. Now, and what I will say about Kyle is he's also great at gauging potential, which is why so many of our late round picks turn into something. And it's hard.
And I don't even know if that's quite him. I think that has a little bit more, like in the sense of late round picks.
Yeah, with the scout team and all that.
I think that has to do a little bit more with the scouts and everything. But Blue Magic, I'm gonna get to the next caller, man. I appreciate you coming on.
You already know. You know I'm here every trip.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate you. All right, here we go. And next caller, we got Gammon. Gammon, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. I did have somebody in here in the chat, and he says, "Croc, you still pumping iron?" Yeah, man. I hit the weights this morning. Let's go. 6 a.m. I'm in there. Yeah.
What was your pre-workout breakfast that you had?
I did not eat breakfast before my workout. Most of the time, I don't.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's
so it's more of a like fasted workout most of the time.
Right. And then how early are you usually trying to get in there and get it in?
6 a.m.
Okay. That's pretty close to us in the military what time we get started. So
6 a.m. and then I get back home. I'm home in time to, if my wife needs me to take my daughter to school, take her to school, and then get back here to record this show from around 8 to 9 a.m. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Blue Magic. He was talking about how whenever Tia comes on, takes one of his talking points, and then Mr. Blue Magic, he takes one of my talking points there. So, I just wanted to just kind of shout that out there.
Can you answer this one here, right? So it says, I don't like to criticize Kyle. And again, anybody that, I don't want it to look at it like criticizing them. I know it can come off like that to some people, but, just questioning him. And the whole thing behind this show today was, do we have the right to question somebody that has done so much good for the 49ers? Like, are we kind of being spoiled? Or are there a lot of other teams that be like, man, you guys are tripping, man. We would love to have Kyle. But he says, but having a faction amongst the ranks is divisive. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yesterday on your show, I said after 7 years, next year, after this year, possibly be 8 years, on your show when I was leaving off, I was saying it might be time to bring in somebody else like Louis Riddick. I think that he's incredibly intelligent, unlike Mike Tannenbaum, or Lombardi. Lombardi, some of these old GMs, what they say, and then every single year when there's like new player evaluation and these new training camps and decisions that have to be made, if they wonder why they're not getting calls from the front office, it's because look at the way that they act. I think for Jimmy Garoppolo said he finally came out and said, but before the preseason game between the Raiders and the 49ers, he said, hey, you know what? Not gonna lie, stuff was pretty awkward, and Kyle Shanahan didn't really do too much to extinguish the flames. He didn't fan the flames, but he didn't do anything to kind of help die it down. He wasn't really putting like a towel or a carpet over it. So yeah, I think that's a good hallmark of a good leader is being able to take that on. But also too, when I kind of look at the relationship values that the front office has, it was always supposed to be Kyle Shanahan was the awkward one and not the one to publicly be the public speaker or the public voice of the front office. It was always supposed to be Lynch. And that was always Lynch's role, to my understanding, when he took on the role, was to kind of be more of that public effigy, that public speaker. And I'm not seeing anything like that from Lynch at all, which is interesting when he's been labeled as kind of the walking TED Talk that's kind of around here. So it's interesting. I think that you nailed it on the head as far as a general. And Kyle Shanahan, he kind of goes through his soldiers, right? The team captains, and he kind of gives it to them. And then they go ahead, those guys with the C on their chest, they go ahead and they disseminate his message down to lower troops. And that was always something I kind of always thought about too, is I wondered how much, when it comes down to this quarterback evaluation, how much does he gives it down to his troops? How much does he actually give to his lieutenants, right? Guys like Brian Greasy that we're not bringing up. I wonder how much input and say Brian Greasy has on who's quarterback 2, quarterback 3. Clint Kubiak, we just picked him up, right? So what is the roles and the power here? The other thing too I wanted to say is we keep on bringing up Andy Reid, but the person who I like to bring up as far as a comparison is actually Mike McDaniel and what he did with Tua.
Oh, man. Yeah.
He came right over there, he brought the exact same process over there, but he actually changed up a lot of the offense.
Hold on. Did you hear about his initial conversations with Tua and like the things that he said to him?
Yes.
So when we talk about instilling a certain level of confidence in a player, he went to Tua, who Tua was, getting drugged, right? For the previous 2 years, people weren't speaking very highly of Tua.
Yeah, not at all.
And he gets Tua and says, "You are great. You're the best, most accurate thrower I've ever seen. The most accurate passer I've ever coached," right? He says all these things. And some of it could be fluff, but it just instilled this level of confidence in Tua to where it's like, man. And he says, "I've never had a coach have my back like that." And when you go out and you do things like that, whether he believes it or not, it still it puts a certain level of confidence in the players. And I think like when I saw Mike McDaniel do that, and then I heard Tua's response to it, I was like, man, like that's awesome. Because Tua may not ever be great, but whatever his max potential is, feels like McDaniels will get that out of him.
Exactly. And I felt the same way that Harbaugh did with Alex Smith. This is the guy who you need to run, to keep everything. You need this guy to be strong. So that way, when he turns to everybody else in that huddle, when you're down a score and you got 50 seconds left and you have to go 70, 80 yards up the field, everyone, like, they see you calm, cool, and collected, and you're not struggling. I really like that point that you made, that positive affirmation, speaking these positive words out there. When that guy said, when he talked about Lance and his mother picking him out of the crib and didn't, I couldn't imagine for me as an NCO, right? And probably a lot of people here have young family. I'm 38. Probably a lot of people here have family members who are 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're in the service. And I would never talk to your guys' niece, nephews, or children and say, when your mom picked you out of the crib, you didn't have any warrior instincts. I would never say that. In fact, I would be removed from the front formation. You just don't talk to people about that or like that. You should be uplifting and bringing them up. And for some of the people who do talk bad about Lance and Trey, I hope that you change if you're in a leadership position, because that's not, hopefully you're not a manager or something else somewhere, because that stuff really, honestly, it eats me up and it bothers me. I did want to say this, though. We were kind of talking about
real quick. I did want to say, I think it's perfectly fine to be critical of Lance or any other player and say things that you feel, maybe they need to improve on, or things that you say, what, I haven't quite seen the instincts that I would like to see. Maybe he eventually gets it, but I'm not seeing it yet. I think that would be a little bit more understandable than the just blatant disrespect. And shout out to Raheem Mostert for coming out and just talking about how, like, why are they being so disrespectful to this man? And then there was a Spaces on Twitter with Quincy Avery in there, and Quincy Avery, he's done work with Trey Lance, and hearing Quincy Avery talk about how Trey Lance is one of the best humans he's ever been around, and how because his daughter is a Trey Lance fan, Trey Lance FaceTimes his daughter once a week and spends like 10-15 minutes on the phone with her, just talking to her, right? Like, that's the type of person that he is. So, I feel like when there's somebody like that, it's like, man, like, do we have to just dog them out? You can be critical, but man, does it have to be to the extent? So yeah, that's just interesting. Just interesting that they go to those levels.
like Jim Harbaugh said, classic quote of his: "Nobody's above reproach. Everybody can have criticism." I actually get criticized in chat. Well, I don't want to say criticized, but people point things out, and when I'm wrong, I instead of pulling like a Skip Bayless and try to over argue a point, I just eat it. And then 49er Gang 916, shout out to you. He said, "I'm a 44-year-old vet. After the initial breakdown, you always build them back up." That word, yes, exactly. There's nothing wrong with, sometimes you have to lower somebody's ears a little bit and then kind of rebuild them back up. That's probably what Zach Wilson is going through right now over there in the New York Jets. And when I think about it, like a military leader, right, who's tough but fair and then has his player support, I look at a guy like Greg Popovich. I think he's a perfect example of kind of how you run that very tough, strict system. But all of his players know that he has his back. When I'm thinking about quarterbacks that fits the Shanahan system, because I don't think it's just Kyle, right? I think it's Kyle and Mike. They've always been together, really running this 49ers organization. I think of it as like John Elway. So John Elway, 6'3", right, 215 pounds, strong arm, could throw it 70 yards, no problem. And also, too, John Elway is the only player right now in NFL history, I believe. Someone fact-checked me, but that's thrown over 3,000 yards and rushed for 200 yards 7 consecutive seasons. So when I think of when they were getting Trey Lance, a lot of people were saying Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but I was really kind of looking at it like a John Elway-esque kind of thing. And I do think the Shanahan offense works. We've just had so much proof.
Again, I think there's a lot of evidence that says not only does it work at a high level when run the right way. And if it didn't work, you wouldn't see everybody around the league running some kind of variation of it with similar concepts. So
yeah, and I kind of look at the pairings, because I don't think it's just so much of what it does for the quarterback, but I think it's about what it does for the running backs. 1994, right? Mike Shanahan was our offensive coordinator. Steve Young, Ricky Waters. Then in Denver, John Elway, Terrell Davis. And then for Falcons, you had Matt Ryan, a couple running backs there, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Raheem Mostert. So it really kind of works. My thing for you is for this, and this is kind of my last point here before I get off, because I don't know, so I don't want to make like I'm making an ignorant statement. I just don't know. But I like this title of this show that you brought up. But I wonder how many coaches we knew were great, but it didn't work out in that first stint, but they made it happen on that second stint. But also, too, that team that they had built up and went on to win a championship after that coach left. Because I think that's the thing. It's so scary if you were to, like, I want Louis Riddick, but it'd be scary if we had to give up Shanahan. But I often think about
Tampa Bay Buccaneers comes to mind right away.
Yes, that's exactly. Tony Dungy, he left. Because I remember the Bucs, they would start off every single year. It seemed like they'd go 5-0, and then inexplicably fall apart. But Dungy won in Indianapolis. But yeah,
we saw that. There's also definitely like cases of a coach maybe his first stint kind of building it up, maybe it not working out as much as you would like, and then that coach going somewhere else and then seeing it succeed. Definitely what comes to mind, Bill Belichick with the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
Where didn't have the most success there. Believe he did win a playoff game, I want to say, or definitely went to the playoffs, but it wasn't like this high level functioning organization. I think he went to the Giants after that, or was it the Giants before the Browns?
It was the Giants, I believe, before the Browns.
Okay, but he ended up signing with New York Jets for like a day, I think.
Yeah.
And then walking it back, something along these lines. You guys can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but and then he eventually went to the New England Patriots, and then we've seen what he's done there. Pete Carroll, another one where he was the New York Jets head coach, didn't quite work out in New York, went to college, built just a juggernaut at USC, went back to the NFL, and what he's done with Seattle and how year in and year out they're pretty good, and somehow they made the playoffs last year, and how he did a really good job of getting the most out of Geno Smith. So I'm gonna get you off, Gammon, man, but I appreciate the call in.
Thank you. All right, man.
All right. Croc, will Kyle be Mark Jackson of the NFL? And that's a good one. I mean, that kind of goes along the lines of what we were just saying with coaches who kind of, through the oop, and then somebody else comes in and then takes the team over the top. I'd say this about the 49ers. I think everybody right now, we have these scars. And again, Kyle Shanahan, excellent head coach. I think he's doing a marvelous job here. We have these scars from the Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly years. And the one thing I would say is, let's say hypothetically speaking, you did fire Kyle Shanahan. Not happening, but let's say hypothetically speaking, you fire Kyle Shanahan today. This team is in a much better situation and position than it was when Jim Harbaugh was fired. So it's kind of like you can't compare like those teams like and the success that Kyle's had to that, because Tom Sula had 1 year to coach that team. And in that 1 year, it was a max exodus. He lost everybody and everyone who contributed to winning for the 49ers. Everybody lost them all. I think the one guy remaining was like Cap and Navarro Bowman. All right. Everybody else lost them all. And then Chip Kelly, the only signing they had was a third string quarterback who tore his ACL in the preseason. And then you get Kyle Shanahan, and it took a couple years to really turn the roster around. But I know we look at it and we look at those years and want to and say, well, it could be worse. It could be that. Well, yeah, it could be that if your team was as trash as those teams were. Like that had the bigger hand in anything more so than any of the coaches. Like those coaches had no chance. Chip Kelly had no chance. And they didn't have any chance to really even build the roster back up after the max exodus from 2014. Like they lost everybody. Crabtree, Frank Gore. Everybody. Anybody you guys could think of, they lost them. Except for Carlos Hyde. All right. So we look at those 2 years and it's like you could go back to goddamn Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe you can if you also lose Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Aiyuk. Like just if you just lose all your best, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, think of a cornerback. Shoots. We can even throw out a guy like Damador Lenore. He's played a lot of games. Talanoa Funga. Take all those players away and then fire Kyle. And yeah, the next coach will probably be asked. But you have this roster, the way it's built. I think that even if you fire Kyle Shanahan, whoever the next coach is would probably have a lot more success than Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula just based on their situations they were in. So as far as the Mark Jackson thing, I can definitely see that being the case because the team is really good. The team is loaded. The team does have a terrific roster. Now, yeah, I'm not saying fire Kyle at all, but those coaches were kind of dealt a bad hand. They were. Jacob Gordon. Sorry, Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly couldn't coach themselves out of a paper bag. I think Chip Kelly could have. Now, maybe he had to change some things up. I don't know. But, to see what he's done at UCLA, kind of turning that team around, what they are like. UCLA, it's kind of tough there to get the recruits, to get the guys, to get the build. Like, and he's turned that thing around. And they're like winning. So like maybe it's just a college coach. That could be the case. But we did see him have some level of success at the NFL level, going to the playoffs, doing those things. I don't think he's an idiot. I think his situation sucked. And it sucks for him that that's how he's viewed. You coached the 49ers, they only won 2 games, and they got you up out of there. And like that team was terrible. It was one of the worst teams on paper I've seen from the 49ers. They were running out there with receivers. Gosh, what was the guy's name? Dude, if you look at the roster and the guys he was playing with, some of those guys, you guys would be like, who? That guy actually played for the 49ers? Who is that guy? All right. So again, I ain't saying Chip Kelly's this great coach, but I do know. I look at those rosters, it was trash. And the roster that the 49ers took over with Kyle Shanahan wasn't great. And they had to kind of build it up. Then they got, Jimmy Garoppolo. Things started turning. And, it took a little bit of time, but they eventually built it up. Insert Tomlin with Kyle. Do we win a ring? Hey, You have a chance. That's for sure. You will have a chance. That's for sure. That's for sure. Chip wasn't good for the NFL, but he would have looked better with this roster. I think he'd be fine. I think he'd be fine with it. I mean, this is the guy. He won double-digit wins. He won double-digit wins with Philadelphia. I want to say the first year he got there. After they had won 4 games the year before, or 6 games they won before, like they weren't great. Who checks Kyle when he's wrong? His wife. Maybe not his wife, because they said what they say about his when they go house shopping, he points out all the things that he doesn't like about a house. His wife like broke down crying because she didn't like any of the house, and he's like, no, actually I do really like this house. And she's like, what? Like, you like this house? Like, all you had was negative things to say. And that's just kind of how he views things, I guess. He thinks about all the holes in it and all the not so great things, but doesn't mean he don't like it. I think he coaches like that too. Does Tomlin ever win a ring with a Hall of Fame quarterback? He played so long. Good question, Rich. He coached that quarterback for so long. It's hard to know what he would look like without Ben Roethlisberger. I'd say in the times that he has played without him, they've looked serviceable at least. And I think with rookie year Kenny Pickett, he went between Trubisky and Pickett, right? What they win? I think they went 9-8. So I think this year is going to tell a lot more about Tomlin and his ability to kind of like just have his team ready. Because again, he doesn't call the plays on either side of the ball, but his ability to just have this team ready. I would say that, we're going to learn a lot week 1. That's for sure. That's for sure. All right, man. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to be here live tomorrow, 8 a.m. same time, 8 a.m. Pacific. Again, if you want to listen to the audio version, it's in the description below. Fun times talking about Kyle Shanahan. I think he's a solid coach, man. Great coach. Just got to get over that hump. Win the Super Bowl, man. That's going to quiet everybody. Appreciate all y'all. Love y'all. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.